hearing about the Farm Bill from a major farm organization, and what's their prediction on a Farm Bill? What do we expect? From the National Farmers Union's perspective, Rob, how do you see the Farm Bill? What are your priorities, and whether you see it getting done? So, welcome to our summit. Thank you for all your past support, but also thank you for representing in many ways a lot of the small farmers of America.
And this is a great question, right? Because nobody really knows. So here, I'll give you my 2 cents on kind of the process. We're obviously encouraged by the effort that happened in the House, not necessarily with everything that's in there or the kind of partisanship that existed through part of that process, but at least it's forward movement. And I think that we needed to see that. I think that was spurred in part by the Senate kind of laying out in greater detail what their priorities are. And so Senator Stabenow, I think, has been pretty transparent in that. And all eyes are on the Senate at this point. For National Farmers Union, what we want at the end of the day is a bill really in the traditional sense that we've had. And that is one that is bipartisan, that speaks to the needs across the entire country, from urban and rural, because it really is that food and farm bill that we all need to have happen. That said, there's quite a bit of farm bill fatigue setting in, I have to say. And so as we look,
Rob, can you explain what you mean by that? Like, we're tired of talking about it. Just leave us alone. That the sky's not going to fall if you don't get it done. Is that what you're talking about, or is it?
A little bit. So obviously, this current farm bill was due to expire at the end of September. And as we were approaching that, right, all of the messaging from everyone who wants to see a farm bill done is it's so important to make sure that we don't miss that deadline. We say sail past the deadline, and then the messaging at that point is all about the fact that we need to get a farm bill done by the end of 2023. It's so important because once you get into a presidential and election year, it makes the prospects of a farm bill all the more challenging. Now we roll into the new year in 2024, and at this point, the messaging has to shift again to one of we have to move quickly on a farm bill in this year if we have any real prospects of getting it done. Now we were beginning to see the movement in the committees, but we're looking at that legislative calendar and that fatigue of do we stay on the message of needing to get the farm bill done now? I think that's really important because I think we still have a shot and we have to take it seriously. But we're certainly beginning to get members who are saying, let's just wait and we'll do it in lame duck. Maybe it won't be the end of the world if we slide into the following year. Meanwhile, our members and farmers everywhere are, left with a great deal of uncertainty.
Yeah, and can I add something to that? That's habit building.
Yeah.
The farm bill, it's the NDAA, has been a must pass. We talk about these must passes pieces of legislation, and we are a Congress that runs on extension, right? We have extenders for this, we have extenders for that. And that is not a way to give certainty to a huge part of our ag industry. Agriculture, as Debbie said, 1 out of every 4 employees are related in this country are involved in food security. And so, that certainty is absolutely critical. And so I think that's why I asked you the question, the farm bill fatigue. I'm sure there's people listening to this say, well, the sky hasn't fallen. And you all have said the sky was going to fall so many times. It's like Peter and the wolf, right? And I'm telling you that at some point this becomes habit forming. And the last thing we need with the farm bill is to have a habit that we are not going to not getting a 5 or 6 year farm bill passed, and I know that's not something that Farmers Union is thinks is would be a wise decision for Congress.
No, absolutely. And just to underscore the really important point that you make here, we have been in a habit over a few Congresses of these must-pass legislation, of debt ceiling battles, etc., that have kind of slid, and we are in this pattern now of a habit that makes coalitions really difficult to hold together when we're trying to make effect, and it continues to, unfortunately, I believe, at least potentially erode the confidence that farmers union members and others have in the process, and that's a real fear that I worry about. In agriculture, there's the old trope of the fact that we're the least partisan of a lot of these things, that we can come together and find common ground. And when you have a situation like this where Congress, just the mechanics of trying to get the process done, spending bills, etc., I think that even in the farm bill kind of space and this broad coalition that we need to pass a farm bill, it begins to erode that kind of confidence in it, and that's troubling, and certainly is the reason why we continue to push for action sooner rather than later to try to get this farm bill done as quickly as possible.
If we step back and we think about the unique position, I mean, Farmers Union is not does not walk in lockstep with the Farm Bureau or some of the commodity groups. What are some of your unusual, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but your proprietary interests for the Farmers Union in the Farm Bill, as an organization that maybe historically has thought more about small farmers, thought more about kind of programs that could expand people's opportunity in agriculture without expecting, a $5 million investment to start out.
That's right. Well, there's a lot of points there, and I would first say, right, that we do represent a lot of small and medium-sized farms, but that can be a really different definition if we're talking about the Red River Valley of North Dakota, or we're talking about central Pennsylvania, and so we do represent a really diverse kind of set of farmers and ranchers across the country. That said, at its heart, a lot of what we're pushing for is consistent with the rest of kind of the farming community: a strong safety net, making sure that we're able to have the risk management tools to stay in farming. But within each of those, traditional kind of safety net and crop insurance, for example, what can we be doing to even increase the opportunity for farmers who don't traditionally use those tools to better take advantage? We're seeing movement, quite frankly, in both the House and with Senator Stabinov's proposal to make it easier for beginning farmers. That's really important to us, right? We want that next generation to have every opportunity because it is so expensive and a huge capital investment. The risk management tools, the same thing. Where we differ just a little bit with some is we support the notion on crop insurance, for example, a heavily subsidized program because of the need to make it cost effective for farmers to actually take advantage of it. But we want to make that affordability of crop insurance even greater for beginning farmers. But we also need to look at some of our largest farmers, and we need that pool of larger farmers and smaller farmers within crop insurance. But do we need to subsidize the largest operations at the same level as everyone else? If it's okay and it makes sense to increase the availability and the affordability of crop insurance, for example, for beginning farmers, why isn't it on the other end also makes sense to kind of reduce some of that? Some for those who have huge scales of economy, that they can weather that risk in other ways as well. So we want to look for ways.
Just so people, I mean, and I'm a big proponent, and I'm not for someone who said let's cap it based on gross income. That's been a nonpartisan kind of initiative. But I think it's like any kind of risk pool. You want to make sure that there's a lot of people in the risk pool
That's right.
to help make the whole system work. But I will tell you about conversations that I had with a lot of small farmers, even in North Dakota, who said, look, you're taking the risk out of farming, which means that bigger guys can outbid me for land. They buy their diesel fuel in bulk and have it delivered right to the farm. I don't have a big enough load to encourage anyone to do that. And so my input costs are higher because I can't compete for land. And so there is, even within the farming community, there is a discussion about whether crop insurance has unnecessarily skewed the risk benefit analysis of farming and advantaged big operators to the disadvantage of small operators.
That's right. And just drawing down on that first point once more, we want as many within that pool, that risk pool, as possible. It has to be viable. That's central. But there is an argument to be made that the largest operations, if you're taking care of that risk too far, the impact that it has. The number one issue that we hear from beginning and new farmers is access to land, right? But it's not just limited to those new and beginning farmers. It's others out there who are looking to maybe bring on somebody, bring on one of their kids into the operation, or are looking to diversify and grow their operation a little bit. We need to make sure that government support is not being driving up those land prices as they unfortunately currently are.
And a couple other areas that I think are important to kind of think about, which is land ownership. And so much of the attention in land ownership has gone to Chinese land ownership. Okay, no one wants the Chinese to own land, and we can all beat the drum. But I've been on this for a long time. In fact, I asked Secretary Vilsack, even when he was in the Obama administration, and I was on the committee. I said, what percentage of farms in America are farmers farming dirt that they don't own? And, it was a curious question. And Roger Johnson, your predecessor, came back to me and said, even in North Dakota, it's about 25%. Now, what does that look like? That means that you probably have a family trust where kids have moved off the farm. And, it's all fine and good when the family trust is controlled by kids who grew up on the farm, right? Now they have jobs in town. They have jobs in, as we say in North Dakota, the cities, meaning Minneapolis, St. Paul. And now what happens when it's the second generation, when it's their kids who have no association with the farm, who are looking at either, I can farm better, so I'm going to tell you how to farm, or they're looking at it like we're going to maximize profitability and go to the highest bidder and not the family that's always farmed that land. And so I think this land ownership analysis, that's a bigger issue than the Farm Bill, but it's something that I think we need to pay attention to, because that idea in America that these are stewards and this is their land, and if they've become not, if the ownership is separated from the production, what does that mean long term for American agriculture? And honestly, what does it mean for the future of the Farm Bill?
You raised so many big questions there, and I think you actually laid out the issue pretty well. And in fact, yesterday the Senate Agriculture Subcommittee held a hearing to hear from beginning and new farmers, and this issue of land ownership and access to land was really one of those central tenements, and is going to need to be a part of the continuing conversation about how we support farmers. And some of the witnesses before the committee spoke about the challenges of even accessing credit when you don't have the same suite of assets, perhaps, as someone who has access to the land and is owning the land. And so it is complex, and the Farm Bill, it'll be part of the conversation, but I think it is also this larger challenge. One of the issues, though, that I want to also kind of tie into, though, that we hear in the countryside all the time, that we want to see brought into the Farm Bill, and that's issues of consolidation and the monopolization of agriculture. And this is something, I don't care where you're at in the country, folks understand that they have fewer places to buy their inputs. And we know what happens to input costs. They never come down, they always go up. Markets are really obscure. There are a few markets. And if we're looking in particular industries like cattle, we know that you have these titans of industry with the packers who are really dictating and manipulating the market in such a way that family farmers and ranchers don't have a fair shot. We think the Farm Bill is a great place to really try to underpin fairness for farmers and ranchers, and to hopefully strengthen things like the Packers and Stockyards Act, laws that we have on the books that are intended to make sure that we have open and fair markets. This is not a question about trying to create special treatment for farmers and ranchers. It's about creating fair markets, open markets, transparent markets, things that are, you think, are woven into the fabric of the U.S. economy, but in fact, we're so concentrated economically that too often these markets are not truly functioning in an open and transparent way.
Well, it's interesting because in that vein, Amy Klobuchar has been a champion over in judiciary. This is a little bit of a jurisdictional discussion, as you know, between the Judiciary Committee and the Ag Committee. But you've got a crossover member there who's both on judiciary and on the Ag Committee, and she's been a champion and taking a look at old legacy antitrust. Is this a lack of enforcement, or is this a lack of opportunity to use a statute? Is a statute too old? A lot of the antitrust laws are really, whether it's in technology, whether it is in agriculture, even in the traditional sense, they aren't functioning the way they used to function, and they certainly are not adequate to deal with consolidation in technology. And so I know that Amy will be on your side. She's been beating that drum, as well as John Tester, who, fighting the right to repair laws, which, just say, a lot of the equipment manufacturers don't want you touching it or avoid the warranty. A lot of people in Congress think that's not appropriate. I want to just take a moment and talk a little bit about climate, because what people may not know is that the National Farmers Union has been way ahead for generations. Actually, I mean, you may think, oh, this is a fairly new phenomenon. No, back in the Bob Carlson days, he was already talking about credits and what agriculture could do in the climate space. How do you see building a broader coalition? I mean, you and I have talked because Saxby Chambliss and I co-chaired the Bipartisan Policy Center initiative on natural climate solutions, issued a report. A lot of the stuff we recommended ended up in the Inflation Reduction Act as advances and increases in conservation funding. But we're seeing a lot of political pushback in that kind of dialogue. How do you see this farm bill addressing that political pushback? And do you think there's still an opportunity to make this farm bill, as Debbie hopes, really a major piece of climate legislation as well?
Well, thanks for that. And just, for those who may be watching, North Dakota Farmers Union, was a pioneer in carbon markets for farmers out there many years ago. And, the rest of the infrastructure in the country to keep that going didn't materialize initially. But here we are once again talking about how do we create these market opportunities that are this nexus between climate and farming, so that ultimately farmers can potentially have new markets that they access for their goods. For example, the climate smart agriculture initiatives and partnership programs that USDA is undertaking right now, which has a lot of these same themes, is going to finally put on the ground and in practice, a way to hopefully certify crops and products that are produced under certain ways that can um, capture a little bit of additional value in the market. I think this is incredibly good because it serves the environment, and the public has the transparency of seeing what farmers are doing, and farmers can benefit from doing the right thing. So I think it's really moving in the right direction. The IRA, historic investment, and in many of these programs, farmers love voluntary conservation programs. They are always oversubscribed and underfunded. IRA made a huge leap forward in creating really a pool of resources that farmers can finally really make sure that they can tap into. We need to make sure that that remains in this farm bill, no doubt. I think that there will continue to be some of this debate around the climate provisions of that, and I think that's a healthy debate to be having. But I have to point out the positive on this, and that is the fact that I was worried that the investment that was being made was going to be siphoned off or lost, redirected to other places in the Farm Bill. And I think that there's really a strong kind of push to at least capture the investment in conservation in the conservation title of the Farm Bill. That's a positive.
I think, Rob, just for people's education, the Inflation Reduction Act was 5 years of funding.
That's right.
5 years of funding. And so these programs like EQIP, conservation programs that were overprescribed, which we mean basically more people wanted to access those programs to adopt those conservation projects than what we actually had money for. This is saying that's ridiculous. These are great programs. They help farmers. They help the economy. They help conservation for soil and water. There's tons of side benefits beyond people thinking about these, and so the idea is, how do we increase the baseline in the Farm Bill to create a permanent placehold for these important programs? And I think the price of that, in some ways, in among some circles, and maybe you have some updated information, was to actually reduce the dollar amount of commitment, which the Democrats aren't willing to do. And so, is that still the status of what's happening with the integration of the IRA and the Farm Bill?
First of all, I will say that this question about translating that investment in the IRA to the conservation farm programs is, I would argue, for those who are in the farm policy world, that's a graduate level course, and you took it and really simplified it in a way that folks can understand it. That's incredible. It is complicated, but really that question was not just the transferring of those funds from IRA and seeing if we can effectively bake it into the Farm Bill baseline, but then there was also a conversation, at least in some circles, to try to then capture that money, if it's baked into the Farm Bill, and redirect it maybe to investments in crop insurance or to put it in other titles of the Farm Bill. That part of the debate appears to be solidly behind keeping the investment in conservation. Now we have the really important conversation about the targeting of those resources to really kind of climate benefiting practices that were included in the IRA. That's where the debate is at right now. Certainly, Democrats in the House and the Democrats in the Senate feel very strongly that those need to be remaining in the bill, and I know that Stabenow will be doing everything possible to make that happen.
So get out your crystal ball, because I'm going to ask you this question. Do we get a Farm Bill this Congress? And if not, when do you expect that we're going to get a Farm Bill into the next Congress?
I knew the question was coming. It doesn't make it any easier. So, I will say, in part because it's my wish, but I do honestly believe that we have an opportunity, and therefore we will get a Farm Bill done. It will. The calendar so
No. You've brushed over. We will get a Farm Bill done. Bum bum bum. When?
So, to the question of when, I'm going to say before the election. We'll leave it at that.
Oh, That is the most optimistic assessment that I've heard. Yay, you.
So I tell you, there are a lot of ways that they could slide, as we all know. But I, first of all, farmers are busy right now. But when they start looking at this, nobody wants to wait. No, other than some of the politicians who see advantages in that. And so I hope that we can come together. And I think it's still possible. And at this point, I would put my money on getting a farm bill done yet before the election.
Oh, you can't comment this way, so I will. Um, Pretty much, I haven't seen the latest numbers, but the Farm Bill has become a political necessity for the Republican Party.
Yeah.
The Republican Party represents rural America. And when they don't deliver, I mean, I always say when people say, when did the Democratic Party start losing in rural America as badly? And I said, when the Republican Party started believing in the Farm Bill. And that commitment that to the Farm Bill and getting this done when they can't deliver a Farm Bill, that's not good politically. And
Yeah.
so for people who say, well, there's no incentive for Republicans, there's a huge incentive for Republicans to do a Farm Bill. They've already slipped the deadline once. That's not a good look if their House can't deliver a Farm Bill. So in some ways, the negotiating strength here is people might evaluate, well, the Democrats want it more than the Republicans. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. And
That's
so
right.
the political calculus is interesting in that context.
I think the action in the House by the Republicans to try to at least advance it forward a little bit is another one of those kind of signals that, yeah, they put forth the bill. Now folks are seeing, at least on safety net and things that they like in that version, they want to see a farm bill done. It makes it feel more tangible. They can almost taste it, and so hopefully we'll see some action out of the Senate. I put my money always on Stabenow, Senator Stabenow, delivering. She's a very tough negotiator and a skilled tactician. So she's going to get this done, I think, in the Senate. And at that point, boy, there will be hell to pay if we don't get a farm bill done, if the House and Senate both have taken some action.
Without a doubt. But I know that the Farmers Union is watching this very closely and representing not only your rural farmers, but your rural communities and the viability of those, whether it's in our research programs or whether it's in rural development. That, as Debbie said, a program that is near and dear to my heart. But I feel better knowing that the Farmers Union is in the room and
Thank you.
has advanced all of the great work that you've done historically. So thank you so much for your advocacy, and thank you so much for where we're headed into the next generation of farmers. I think, it's incumbent not only to deal with food security today, but think about food security in the future, and climate's a big part of that. So
Absolutely. Thank you for
thanks so much. We will be in touch, and I'm going to now tweet out that you said we're going to get Farm Bill this year.
Perfect.
Thanks, Rob.